with Vince Russo reportedly begging WWE for a job and Money in the Bank plans getting in the way of having unified world titles. This is Wrestling Hub. My name is John, and you're watching the Wrestling Report for May 10th. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Wrestling Hub Official, and also follow us on Twitter at Wrestling_Hub. After making his way to AEW, CM Punk is now getting set for his world title match against Hangman Page. On his Strictly Business podcast, Eric Bischoff touched on Punk, previously saying that casual fans don't exist in pro wrestling anymore. How do you define the casual fan? I don't know if there's one definition, and everybody will have their own definition. I've always considered casual fans within the context of research as people who drop in once or twice a month and always have. They still like it. If there's nothing going on, if they have some time, and they don't have anything else they're really interested in doing at that moment. They might also habitually check out wrestling. They probably don't go to live events or go to 1 or 2 pay-per-views a year, but they still have an affinity for the product and will tune in occasionally. That's a casual fan to me, but I'm sure for other people, they might have a different definition of that. The casual fan is still out there. If you build it, honest to God, as corny as it sounds, if you build it, your audience will show up. They will. That lapsed fan is another term I've heard in a lot of research that I did. I used to watch wrestling, but I don't watch that anymore. Sometimes it's just life, your job, your kids, whatever. If anybody's going to try to convince me that you can't find that audience again, they shouldn't be in the wrestling business. All due respect to CM Punk. CM Punk never spent 5 minutes in the television business. He knows a lot about what's going on in the wrestling ring. He knows a lot about building a character, more than I ever will in terms of executing it. But to make the casual statement that I think the lapsed fan is gone and I don't think they're ever going to come back, what are you doing in the television business then, dude? It makes no sense to me. I don't believe it's true. With the undisputed WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns hinting at a possible hiatus from pro wrestling, Dave Meltzer noted on Wrestling Observer Radio, "I'm trying to get more information on this, but he was removed from all shows. His last show is June 19th until after Labor Day. I don't know what the situation is, but he is scheduled for 2 pay-per-view shows. I don't know what that is, whether he's doing a movie, but it is. Obviously, we already know his schedule going forward after June is going to be cut back anyway, but there will be a period where he won't even be on television because he's been removed from all the advertisement." While a title unification bout between the Raw and SmackDown Tag Team Champions was initially expected for WrestleMania Backlash, it seems those plans fell through, as Meltzer reported, so this is what I was told. They are going to do the match, but as of right now, I was also told this can change. They're not planning on actually unifying the titles, but they are planning on doing the match. So I don't know if that means another run in DQ. They obviously can always change their mind, but they're right now planning on doing the match. I'm presuming it's going to be the next pay-per-view. That I don't know for sure. Former WWE writer Vince Russo recently claimed that a couple months ago he had offered the company help as a consultant, with him noting he did not want to be hired and did not have a desire to work in that environment. Now, Ringside News is reporting that Russo has been begging to get a job with his former employer. Russo has tried many different ways to get back into WWE. He's called the networks as former head writer WWE and WCW and tried to get the networks to hire him as consultant or get the networks to pressure WWE to hire him. He's called anyone he knows in WWE to get back in. He tries to position it to the public that he would never work here again, and he's begging every day to get hired. During a Q&A with Monopoly events, WWE Hall of Famer Trish Stratus talked about making a return to the company after seeing the match between Becky Lynch and Lita. Yeah, to be honest, it did. Watching Becky Lynch versus Lita made me get the buzz to return. I was lucky, a couple weeks later, the live event was so much fun because it was just after that, and I got a chance to go back, and it was in Toronto and in another town near me at home, so I just drove in, took my kids, and yeah, you get in there, you feel the energy of the crowd. You do some promos, you do some slapping, and it's just like, oh, it's good. good. So I love it. It'll always be in my blood, you know? I did a post and it said, I'll never not feel at home between these ropes, right? So it's in me forever. The cool thing is sometimes we go back and you're like, oh my god, can I do this? Like, it's been a while. And the first time I went back after many years was to fight Charlotte Flair for a singles match. It had been like 11 years and 2 children later, so I was like, I don't know. And you don't know until you actually have the match. You can practice and you can roll around in the ring, but you don't know until you actually get in there. I mean, nailed it would be something I would use to describe that. I'm being sarcastic, guys. I don't think I did though. But it was like, it's just kind of cool that wrestling is like riding a bike for us wrestlers. That's what I've discovered. It's kind of cool. I mean, maybe you move slower, but some of us don't. After Malachi Black spit mist on Julia Hart, she's been wearing an eye patch and working her way to joining his stable. Talking about a segment regarding this on Dynamite last week, Jim Cornette criticized AEW for having the worst segment in wrestling history. This was the worst segment I have ever seen on wrestling television because there was no redeeming value to this. This material was so horrible that nobody cared. Anybody who came up with this story should be sent away to prison. There's no punishment too heinous. Nobody should have been forced to watch this. You Sid and the Kid, Brian Pillman Jr. to tell the story, which is hokey BS. He tried so hard, and he ended up screaming and squeaking, trying to put his soul into it for the rotten creative. With Inside the Ropes, House of Black's Brody King recently told AEW fans to let the Julia Hart angle reach its conclusion before criticizing it. I feel like the fans want instant gratification at all times, and then they get frustrated when they have to wait for it. Once it all pans out and you finally see the finished product and why these things are happening, then they go, oh. Then they get to see these callbacks and all these little Easter eggs, and hints they were given along the way. If we saw Avengers Endgame before we saw the 20 movies before that, and Thanos just got defeated, it's like, oh, okay. They get you more invested and get you to this point where you have to wait for it, and you want it, and you're just dying for it, and then it finally happens, and you're like, yes, this is why I waited this long for it. Not to say this is as complex as that, but I feel like wrestling is, at times, missing that factor of making fans wait for it, making them beg for it, and at times criticize it because they're not getting it. When my 3-year-old wants ice cream and I tell him he's got to wait for dinner, he's going to yell at me until he gets it. But then when he eats, he's happy about it. After Seth Rollins cost Cody Rhodes a shot at the US title on Raw last night, it seems the two will be heading into yet another match. On Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer talked about the possibility of ending this feud inside Hell in a Cell. They have to do a third match now, so what stipulation do you do? Could be Hell in a Cell, yeah. Doesn't feel like there's a Roman Reigns match ready. I mean, you could do the Edge and Damian Priest against AJ Styles and Finn Balor match. You could put the tag team unification, but then somebody has to win. You can't do a no contest in a Hell in a Cell. I mean, I guess they probably could. They can always find a way to do something. Also on Wrestling Observer Radio, with Cody Rhodes recently revealing that the winners of the Money in the Bank ladder match would earn title shots at WrestleMania, it was pointed out what this potentially means for the unified world titles in the company. Anyway, there's another thing that will probably get clarified in the next day or two, but the ad was what the ad was. They didn't say the winner can cash in whenever they want through WrestleMania. It was like the winner gets a title shot at WrestleMania. In theory, on July the 2nd, we will have 2 contenders for WrestleMania the next April already done. You know, a men's and women's contender. And if the Royal Rumble remains what it is, that would tell you there's going to be championship matches, both men's and women's. There's only one men's title, but I guess that means maybe there will be a second men's title by the time we're at WrestleMania, which doesn't surprise me. Everyone knew that it was a matter of time before they went back to 2. From the women's standpoint, we would have a Raw and one of the championship matches. Not the match itself, but one of the contenders, waiting from July on, at least based on the ad. I don't know. The ad was what the ad was, but nobody seemed to know that anything had changed either. Going back to Eric Bischoff, the former WCW president, would also put out a tweet yesterday saying better storytelling equals growth. If AEW ever wants to get the other 900 fans in the room, they'll need to stop booking for one small segment of the audience. This led to a fan replying, I'd argue that WCW catered more to the hardcore fan and tried to keep them happy by not devaluing beloved babyfaces and doing more with their great undercard. They would have staved off the precipitous decline that happened in '99. The wrestlers were better than WWF's and didn't take advantage. CM Punk would then respond, wrestling Twitter needs to stop amplifying all the old head, bad faith, bad take, carny dipshit They had their moment in the sun. Let them die in the dark with their ego podcasts. Quote me. With Edge's faction Judgment Day having the likes of Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley, the group looks to be unstoppable. Now, PW Insider is reporting that there has been talk in WWE about adding another member, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. Being the face of WWE during the PG era of programming and doing a ton of charitable work, it's no surprise that John Cena never got the chance to be a heel after gaining the popularity he did. Talking about this on In the Envelope, Cena recalled the time he realized he would never get to be a villain on screen again. WWE and sports entertainment walk that gray line. Everyone knows it's entertainment, everyone, but everyone wants to believe in what's going on. They don't ask. Even the most iconic superhero characters, they're known for their performances, but they do get to step away. There is a clear-cut difference. In WWE, the audience doesn't want that. They don't. And that's what keeps them coming back, and that's what keeps the train on the tracks. That's part of it. So I was made aware that I would not undergo a tectonic shift in John Cena, the character, probably around 2009. So that allowed me to get that conversation off the board, and I had to, or I chose to dive into nuance. And this was your Pro Wrestling News Update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.